that's me. Hi, how are you? Today we're going to talk quite a bit about the idea of selling your product. Quickly, before we get started, can I get a good sense in here of how many people here are looking to, whether immediately or 5 years down the road, sell a TV series to someone? Is that sort of, and how many people have more movie projects? Is that, some people have both. Great, it's okay. And other times it's just really good to understand how best to sell any of the things that you're working on. Sometimes it's also best to learn how to sell yourself. But today we're going to be talking specifically about what to do when you are going to go to market. Like if you ever go, I actually ran into Hosnell at Kidscreen this year and we hung out, yay! And there was a really large contingent from Malaysia there, which was great. But if you're gonna spend all that money to get yourself to Florida and have the opportunity to meet with people who might actually buy your show, you wanna make sure that you're prepared for what it is that they're going to be asking you, what it is that they're expecting from you. Or sometimes you might, for instance, I know there's a lot of meetings going on this week with folks like Silas from Cartoon Network. If you have the opportunity to sit down with them and talk about your show or your movie, what are the things that he's going to be expecting? What are the things that you should be prepared to talk about, and how should you go about that to make sure you have the best chance to sell it? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's see here. Is this working? Clicker? Hello? Clicker? Clicker's not working. Oh, okay, cool. Now we've got it going. So I've broken this down into a series of, we're going to go through 7 rules so everyone knows about how far we are through the presentation. There's a lot to cover today too, so I'm going to get through it fairly quickly. I'm happy to answer questions either here if we have a little bit of time, or when you see me out in the lobby afterwards. I actually came to Malaysia maybe 4 years ago and did this as an entire day-long presentation. So I've truncated it and we'll get to some of it, but there is a lot to cover. So let's dive in. First off, the very first thing, if you're going to sell your property, is that it has to be really amazing. And I think way too many people don't spend enough time before they go to market making sure it is as good as it can be, because no one's going to buy it if it isn't awesome. So, really, if you are going to be bringing something, make sure lots of other people have looked it over. They've looked over all your materials. You've given your pitch many times. You've taken feedback from people, and you've willingly incorporated that and made your project better and made your pitch better. So when you're looking at it though, what is the core of what makes the show awesome? Really, at the end of the day, it's characters. And right now, yes, I am at Arenanet, which means I make games. I make stories for video games. But for about 10 years, I was the person who, if you wanted to sell your show to Disney, or Disney Channel, Toon Disney, Disney XD, you would come to me and you would pitch your show. The #1 mistake people made is that they didn't spend enough time really developing their characters and making great characters, because they are the things that make a show amazing. They're the things that allow you to tell many, many stories over the course of a series. They're the things that people identify with. We just had the keynote where you saw, like, you can put Poe on everything because people love Poe. Poe is a really well-developed character. He's got a lot of great strengths, got some great weaknesses, and that makes him funny, that makes him really likable, and that's the sort of thing that people will remember. That's the thing people put on a t-shirt. And those are the things, therefore, that are going to help sell your show. When you're looking at it, I can't overestimate, whether you're doing a film, whether you're doing a TV series, make sure that your characters are well developed. So, if we look at it a little bit more, a lot of times people think it really is about the story, especially in film sometimes, and it's not. It's never the actual story. The story itself is not about the plot. It's about how characters react to the things that are going on around them. And so you need to have really well-developed, thoroughly outlined characters that you understand how they are going to react to a situation regardless of the situation they're put into. And the test I always give myself is, I know I've done enough character development if I can think about any situation and I know what that character is going to do. I know what that character is going to think. It is pretty impossible when you have really good characters to just say, I'm going to write a story and it's going to start at point A and it's going to get to point B, because that character won't let you do that if they're a really good character. They're going to go, no, we'll start at point A, but then we'll go over to point F, and then we'll go to point 17, and then we'll go to point tortilla, and then we're going to wind up maybe at point B or maybe at point D, because that's what the character wants to do. When you're looking at this, again, the situation and the way that they react to each other is really critical. So, here's a good example. If we look at these two. Cinderella versus Lilo. And sometimes I like to picture them in like a boxing match, you know? Like, if you were to put these two in a boxing match, who would win? Lilo, absolutely, Lilo would win, right? Lilo's tough. Why would Lilo? Well, you know, Cinderella sure isn't doing this, right? Cinderella would never do that. Lilo would do this. Okay, let me ask you guys also another question. What's the really interesting thing that both Lilo and Cinderella have in common? I'm just going to leave this up here, by the way. So, what is that really critical, life-changing thing that both Cinderella and Lilo have in common? Orphans, yeah, neither of them have parents. Okay, that's a really traumatic thing. This is such a realistic example of what happens when you come from a family that's been broken and your sister is doing the best job she can, but your best friend is a doll that you've stitched together with random buttons, and this girl tells you that you're a freak because you don't have a family. Like, that's what an actual character, like, it's a very relatable, understandable thing, because Lilo herself has a lot of issues. Lilo has a natural, though, reaction to the circumstances she's put into. And when you think about it, Cinderella's not a bad character. Cinderella has a lot of good weaknesses, but Cinderella, when you look at what she's done, like, okay, largely Cinderella's answer is to make good friends with the mice in her house and have them help her get dressed in the morning. But Lilo really has a nice visceral response to it. And that's the kind of thing that you want to think about, is what actually would a character with those real circumstances do? And Lilo has so many more weaknesses. And I will say that is the thing that, by and large, people, especially when they're making children's television, don't do enough of. People don't give their characters weaknesses because they think they want the main character in particular to be perfect. They want them to be the kid that everybody wants to be. You know what? That's really, really boring. So you want to think about your characters and think about, what is it that they don't do so well? How might they be their own worst enemy? You know, Lilo gets in her own way a lot because she does jump into situations. She does punch Myrtle Edmonds. And that's the kind of thing that gets her. She's got a hot head because of it. But she's also got a really good heart, and you want to balance those things out, so hopefully her good points will ultimately allow her to win the day at the end of every episode or at the end of the movie. All right, so let's get through that. Oh, goodness. So the other thing you want to be thinking about is an inventive concept. I will say another big mistake that people make when they would come in and pitch is that they would pitch the same idea that is already on TV multiple times. I cannot tell you how many times I heard the 5 multicolored robots join together to make another robot show pitch. Or the, oh, it's 5 kids on the playground, and one's the leader, and one's the smart one, and one's the athlete, and my favorite, one's the girl. Okay, another big hint, girl is not a character type. We need a little more character development than that. But you need stuff that has, whether it's what we call high concept, which is much like Ben 10. Ben 10 found a wristwatch that allows him to turn into 10 different monsters and fight the day. Or something like a show like Recess, which again has, hey, a leader and 2 girls and, you know, the athlete and other things. But these characters were really, really well developed and they would play with each other really nicely in different stories. So whether you have a low concept or a high concept show, you should also be able to talk about it in one sentence. Everybody make sure that you know what that one sentence thing is, whether you're making a film, whether you're making a TV show. What is the one sentence that describes it? Because you might need to pull that out really quickly if you happen to have someone introduce you to Silas, who works at Cartoon Network and is interested in buying new shows. You have about 10 seconds of his time while you shake his hand. What's that one sentence that you're going to say? Know it. Okay. And finally, a compelling visual style. Okay, you want things that look different than other things that are on TV or other things that are in a movie. There are a lot of great styles out there, but find your own. And for those of you who came to the Cartoon Network thing yesterday, it doesn't necessarily have to be the highest, glossiest, prettiest thing ever if it reflects your own style. Okay, so make sure that it's distinct. And if it is going to be a little rougher, a little more lo-fi as we call it, make sure that it behooves the pitch, that works with the kind of pitch that you're actually giving. All right. And then the biggest thing, honestly, is make sure the right people are working on your project. Talented people, you all and all of the people that you work with, are the most important thing to make a show awesome. Okay? And keep in mind this last thing down here. Make sure that you are as good as you can be at your craft. Every one of us should always be getting better at what it is that we do. Okay, there are people out there who can mentor us. There are new tools. We can be practicing more. We can be telling more stories. We can be drawing more characters. The better you are at it, the more the quality is going to show. It just shows in the pitch for sure. All right. That's the basics. Make sure your show is awesome. But now we get into then, what do you need to do to sell it? Rule number 2 is know that a pitch is much more an opportunity to sell you than it is to sell any individual show or project. The truth of the matter is, if we look at this, it's really unlikely at any given meeting that you are going to sell your show or your movie. Okay, and it may not be because your show is not good enough. Oftentimes it is just not what the buyer is looking for. But if you go in and you make a good impression because you show your talent, you show that you're a nice person to work with, you show that you've got great ideas and that you take feedback and criticism well, the next time they have a project that they're looking for, they're gonna then come and knock on your door if they think that you're a good fit. It's a much better thing for them to like you and like your company and like your ideas than to actually buy that thing at that given time. Okay, you want them to buy lots of things from you over the next 20 years, right? So think about it as an opportunity to sell you. And so you want to make sure that you are showing your talent. What is it that your company or you yourself are really good at? You know, maybe you're an amazing character designer. Maybe you're an amazing storyteller. Okay, make sure that that's kind of the highlight and you're really showing what is special about your company or what is special about you and the projects that you're going to bring to them. And notice I'm saying you want to show those things. You don't just want to walk into a meeting, like many people do, and be like, I'm a really funny person. I'm not going to believe that until I actually see that. I see it in the way you convey your story. I see that in the way you tell it. I understand from the clips you show, from the character designs, I understand how good you are because you're showing me. Just saying, oh, we've got the best character designers. If you're not bringing any character designs that back that up, I'm not going to believe you. All right. And make sure you're making connections. Again, with that idea that you want a really long-term relationship with these people. So make sure that you're being genuine. I mean, it's so easy to tell when you just are coming in to sucking up because you're hoping that I will buy a show or any of the other buyers will. Like, come in, be a good person. Rule number 1 is I want to work with people I like to work with. You know, so come in, be a genuine person. If you've done your research on what I've worked on, what the company that you're going in to pitch on is working on, that's great. It helps make those connections because you understand that hey, we pitched this kind of show and we like that, and you think that you can fit into that in this way. And make sure that you're absolutely practicing your pitch so that you don't need to stick to a script. Because the best opportunity to have that connection is when you maybe start and then I ask you a question. Me asking you a question in the middle of your pitch and cutting you off is absolutely one of the best things that can happen. Some people take it as a chance, like they think they get flustered and they're like, wait a minute, why are they cutting me off? I must not be doing a very good thing. No, if you're doing something that's compelling enough to make me ask you a question, you're starting to win. Okay, so take that as a compliment, but be prepared to allow the conversation to go off script. So you have to practice it enough that you can get back on this, or you can go in some other direction if that's where the buyer is interested in taking that. And that will also really help you make more of that connection with a person. All right. Hey, so rule number 3 is make sure, like anything, you know your audience. Okay, and this really is twofold. It's both the audience that you are making a show for, but also the audience that you are pitching this to. Okay, like what is your buyer really looking for? Oops. Here's the other thing. Sometimes you get the opportunity to pitch something to someone who you know is not going to be interested in buying the shows that you are bringing to them. That is not a bad thing because, like we said in rule number 2, the more important thing is that you make a really good connection with them. So sometimes you go in and you'd still want to pitch your show idea, even though you know that that's not what Disney is going to put on it, because really you're bringing them more of an Adult Swim show. Okay, those two are never going to line up. But if you show them that you are capable of making a really good Adult Swim show, very few people are capable of making a really great show regardless. So if you show them and you're like, look, these are the kind of things we've been working on, but I'm here because I really want to understand better what it is you want to, what you're looking for and how we might work together. And you sort of reframe it to make a connection with them so that they might hire you or buy your next project. All right. All right, so you want to make sure that you understand what audience your show is for. And I will say a lot of people don't. The wrong answer is it's for everyone. There is no show that a 40-year-old man and a 6-year-old girl like equally. Okay, that is just wrong. In fact, it's for all kids is also not a very good answer. Because a 3-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl, again, look for very, very different things in their movies, in their animated shows, all of those things. So make sure that you've really brought it down to what is the real demographic that you're looking for. And again, you want to say, is that the demographic that this network, this movie studio, this buyer is also looking for? Again, if it's not, have a great meeting, make a great connection. All right. And yes, so in terms of this is kind of a summary of this, but the big thing that I want to point out is not every buyer is going to be right for you. I talked a little earlier about how your project's not going to be right for everyone, but you also really want to research them and you want to understand what it is that a buyer is going to do for you and for your property. It might sound unthinkable, but sometimes it is the best thing to walk away from an offer that a network or a studio might give to you, because the way that they treat properties, the amount of money that they pay, the amount of creative control they're going to take, those things might not line up with what you really want that property to do or what you want your involvement to be. So you need to know more about that buyer and understand and really look at the terms of the deal that they're offering you. If you're lucky enough that they're like, yes, I want to buy your show, I'll pay you $10. And I'm going to take it over here and you can't touch it ever again. And if we put your character on a, t-shirt and some cereal boxes, you get nothing from that. It will sometimes happen that way, so you need to make sure that you're looking at that, and sometimes that buyer's not going to be right for you. All right. So here's the other thing. I added this one because there are other ways to think about this, the buyer these days. Because the buyer traditionally has been TV networks, movie studios, you know, maybe there are some other buyers who might represent things and put you in their portfolio. We're getting to a place in the market where it's entirely possible that you don't need a buyer in the traditional means. You can start thinking about other ways that you can take your project and put it out to audiences. You can get money through a lot of different crowdsourcing situations. You can put them out. You can distribute your project in ways that actually pay you money through other means on the internet and other kinds of digital distribution. This is an area that I think, we're not going to dive into it too much right here. I'm happy to talk to people more about this outside. But we're starting to reach a tipping point where you can potentially be your own buyer, or you can find your own buyer and create your own sources of revenue. You can create your own sources of distribution. So don't overlook that. But if you're going to put your stuff up on Kickstarter or any of these other things, you still need to give people a really good pitch. Okay? It's just a different audience, so know your audience. What is it that the Kickstarter funder, who might give you $75, you know, and you're really excited that, okay, that's great and all, but then I'm going to need 10,000 people to each give me $75. What is it that is going to make that one person, and therefore then the next, you know, 9,999 of them also be willing to give you that $75? Again, it's know your audience. It's different than a network. Okay, so rule number 4, it's like halfway there. The buyer is going to expect certain things when you have a meeting with them. So make sure that you have the things that are on this list. You are always going to want to, in any pitch meeting, just start with an overview. Okay, this is a show about. This is a story about. And what is that thing that you can do in 2 minutes or less? Okay, and it's really got to be 2 minutes or less. And again, someone might interrupt you and start asking questions 30 seconds in. Start with the most important stuff and get into more explanation. Okay, you want to make sure, like we talked about before, what makes something awesome? It's the characters. So make sure you're getting into the characters. You're not keeping it really vague about, oh, the plot, and there's explosions, and then there's a car chase, and okay, I don't care unless I know how that affects someone. So make sure you're getting that in, you're getting the tone. With this 2-minute chat, you want to avoid lots and lots of story details. You want to talk more about the overall character, the tone of things. All right. And note that last bullet point. There are way too many times where people come in and again, they're like, oh, it's the funniest show, it does these things. And there's nothing in your pitch that's funny. That's not going to give me a really good sense that you're capable of making lots of funny material. So if it's supposed to be suspenseful, if it's supposed to be funny, if it's supposed to be dramatic, if it's supposed to be silly, make sure that that comes out in the way that you're pitching. All right? Notice here, the keyword that I will say here is a short clip of animation might actually work. This kind of dovetails into the next page, oh, that's right, I put this in here thinking, let me double check for a second. I think we're gonna be a little shy on time. This is something though that I would encourage everyone today, while some of these things are fresh in your brain, to make sure that you know what that overview is. What is that 2 minutes that you would go into a pitch room? A little more time, I'd just make you guys start writing notes right now. But make sure that today you start thinking about what is that 2-minute pitch? Because this right here is the key. Most people make up their mind in that first 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, so this has to be the strongest of anything that you do. All right. So if during that 2 minutes, once that's all over, there's either like, huh, interesting, or hey, I like it, tell me more. Like, if there's kind of that, then you want to get into more of the specifics. So you want to make sure that you know these various things. For series, Okay? Make sure you get more into the personalities. Remember what we talked about before with Lilo and the fact that Lilo has weaknesses. What does Lilo really want more than anything? Lilo really wants a family. Lilo wants a stable family of, and an ability to just kind of thrive and be around and feel like she's got a home. That her ohana is complete. So focus on those. And then also talk about, here are several stories that you can tell with those characters. That's kind of the next phase. And that, especially for a series, is going to be really crucial because in a series, ideally, you're going to get to a place where you have to tell 100 different stories. Okay, so you better be able to tell me 3 of them that make me really excited when you're pitching. Okay, because otherwise I'm not going to think that by season 4 you're still going to have a lot of great stories to tell. And then for film, obviously film instead tells one story, okay? But it is still very character-centric. It's how do those events impact the character? How does that character change over time? And then in both of these, you can do, again, a very brief clip that gets them excited, but hopefully leaves them wanting more. So here are a few things to avoid. Definitely going on about a pitch at the beginning for longer than 2 minutes. We've talked about that. But number 2 is the one I really want to call out. If you've produced a full episode of your show, don't expect that I'm going to watch it in a meeting. Okay, that is, you can leave it behind. That can be additional information. But I want to get to know you, and I want to get to know why you're excited about the show. I don't want to awkwardly sit next to you watching something on your iPad and having questions, because again, I even think 2 minutes is too long. I think find a really good 30 seconds. I will watch that like crazy, but it'll, like, if you're setting up a joke and you can pay it off in that 30 seconds, that's a really effective piece of content that's going to help your pitch. I've actually been in many a meeting where by about the 3rd minute of stuff, and I can see it's not stopping, we're not going anywhere, I'm just expected to sit here and watch a show, I've just stopped. And I'm like, okay, let's move on, because at that point, truth is, if I'm kind of bored, okay, you've lost me. If I've gotten to a place where I just want to talk to you and ask questions, again, you've lost me. So get to something awesome. Use that, but then sell me on you. All right. There's a few other things up here. I will say, I've been in some where people have given me like really gimmicky things. They've come in with like, in a lobster costume. Happened once. Not really an effective way to make me think that the star of this pitch is your show. The star of the pitch all of a sudden became you in a lobster costume. And I will tend to think that there's not enough substance to your idea if you try to go too gimmicky with things. And then make sure you're taking questions and feedback. And here, this is a really interesting one, because like Silas said yesterday, if any of you were in that pitch, it is important that your show is able to be turned into merchandise, turned into a game maybe, turned into lots of other things. It has a web presence, has a social media presence. Those are all really critical, but if you spend too much time talking about the awesome game that you could make about this, I'm going to start to think, well, maybe you should make a game instead of a TV show. Go make a successful game, and then come back, and maybe I'll be interested in buying your show. Okay? So you can bring them up, but they should kind of be self-evident with just a couple sentences about them. And then, if you're going to go all the way to MIP or Kids Screen or something, and you're going to spend those many ringgit to get there, make sure you're bringing enough materials. Like, spend the extra 50 and print off more copies of your one-sheet handout or your DVD or whatever it is that you want to leave behind. There are a number of people who I've met with at marketplaces who, for some reason, they've run out of stuff. They don't have any more business cards. Okay, bring the stuff. Make sure you don't run out. Okay, and let's here. All right, so rule number 5. So those materials that you're not going to run out of, what should they be? Okay, Make sure that you have one sheet of paper that you can leave behind. I don't want to bring back from the marketplace a 100-page script. I don't want to bring back thick mini Bibles of stuff that are in a 3-ring notebook. I want to bring back one sheet, hopefully that gives me all maybe a strong mini Bible if I'm really excited about it, but this is the most important thing. Maybe you're going to have a clip of animation. Now, some people think this is really important. It's getting to be more important. Certainly, if you are a studio, and I know that a lot of these exist here in Malaysia, if you're a studio who's already produced 39 episodes of a certain show, yeah, I will absolutely want to see one or more of those episodes. Okay, but if you just have a strong idea and a good creative team and you're looking for some funding to help get that completely out the door, you don't need lots of animation. You need really great character designs, you need really great storytelling. That can all come out in a mini Bible and at least get people excited enough to give you more feedback and potentially buy your show to give you money to help you make the actual animation. All right, and so if you're putting together your mini Bible, this is an area where a lot of people don't know everything that should go in it, and I've seen a lot of them that don't give me the answers that I need to know. So here are the really critical pieces. You need to have your show concept really clearly laid out. That's sort of that 2-minute pitch, right? Character descriptions, character and background art. Art is pretty critical at this point. I would say when I started at Disney about 15 years ago, I had lots of times that writers would come in and pitch me things and it would just be written material, and that was okay. I could go pair them up with an artist and make that all happen. I could sort of develop the whole picture. And the truth is, yes, I'm still capable of doing it, but you're now competing with a lot of people who are already pairing themselves up, who are doing a really good job of getting out there and networking, and if they are a writer, they're finding the right artist. If they're an artist, they're finding the right writer, or they're finding the right director, and they're creating almost a mini studio and a mini partnership to pull that all together. And bluntly, some people who are buying it don't have a lot of imagination, so you want to make sure you have some art. Okay, and definitely sample storylines, particularly for a show. Okay, if it's a movie, obviously your one story should pretty much be your pitch. And then this. Okay, and here we go on clicker. Okay, so your concept, make sure your concept is boiled down to less than 1 page. You can have a log line that's probably only 2 sentences long, but then you'll have a concept in your mini Bible. Okay, don't keep going on. And ideally, you're writing it from sort of the point of view of the main character. How are they experiencing this world? Okay, and character descriptions. These are really critical in TV. They're they're important in movies. They're really critical in television. So your main characters could have up to about 3 paragraphs each. The secondary characters, 1 paragraph should be fine. Okay. But use lots of examples. Again, this is the sort of thing where you illustrate through words how they're funny, how they're clumsy, how they're forgetful, all those things that make them a really interesting character. Show examples. Don't just say they're funny or clumsy or forgetful. All right, and the interpersonal relationships are part of what make a series really interesting. So make sure you're understanding how the brother and sister feel about each other, how the sister feels about the brother's best friend, how they all treat the family dog. You know, you want to understand how those relationships work together. All right, and character art. The biggest thing is it's got to be amazing. Don't put in art that is not good. Like I said, it's getting really critical that you have art. So good art will absolutely help a pitch. Bad art will kill it immediately. This is not the sort of thing where you're like, oh, my niece went to art school and she kind of does things sort of like this, so I'll have her draw some characters for me. Not the way to get this sold. Like, find a partner or pay someone who really is excellent at this to show your vision for what these characters and what the style looks like. Remember how earlier we talked about like Tron and South Park and all those different things? They look really different, but they have a unique style, and that style can be enough to hook a buyer sometimes. So find that style, but find the right partners to make sure they're putting that art together. And if you are sort of an artist, but you're not a great artist, don't think that you have to do it alone. You know, find the right partner for this. All right, and sample storylines. The biggest thing that I will say, the biggest mistakes on here are making sure that each one of them has a beginning, middle, and an end. Don't end your storylines with, and who knows what will happen next? Because I'm like, I don't know what will happen next. You should know what happens next. So tell me how it ends, because that's what makes a good story. A good first and second act that doesn't have an ending is a bad story. So I need to know that you can tell a really good story. So in that one paragraph, make sure I know how it starts, what the conflict is, and how it resolves. The other thing is that this one, also about the main character, very frequently, this is this is something that shows break all the time, because, again, if you go back to the idea that your main character needs to have weaknesses, needs to have strengths so that they're really interesting, a lot of times they're not. I'll be kind of blunt. I love the show Kim Possible, and I worked on it, and I thought it was awesome. We had a really hard time making sure that Kim was the center of all of the episodes, because Kim, oftentimes, she's kind of almost too perfect. You know, she was pretty, she was smart, she was a cheerleader, she saved the world. Like, she didn't have a lot of weaknesses, and so her best friend, Ron Stoppable, or Rufus, the naked mole rat, or her nemesis were oftentimes the things that drove the story. Dr. Draken or Shigo and those people were so much more often the star of the episodes. And that's something that we want to make sure is not going to happen when we're looking at this. We want a core character, so make sure that most of the episodes there really come from that person's point of view. And this is the other one, is that if you have characters in your Bible, they should appear in at least one of the sample episodes. If not, take them out of your Bible. They're not that important. And you're going to spend a lot of time trying to write stories to include them. Why? You know, it's a really good test on yourself. All right. You might also want to have some of these things, depending on really what it is that you want to do and your strengths. If you are a writer, you also want to make sure that you're giving a sample of your written work so that they know that they can trust you to be the writer. It doesn't actually have to be a script of that show that you are pitching. It could be some other script that you've written. They're just going to need to see an example, maybe not at that pitch, but eventually, of the fact that you can do it. Same goes with all these other things. It really comes down to, how are you going to sell you? Okay? And I can't tell you how many times I've come back from a pitch and I've looked at something, I'm like, this is really interesting. And there's no way to contact that person from that one sheet that they left behind because they didn't put their name or their email address or their phone number on it. Don't do that. Like, that's a really, really bad mistake. So that's core of that, and bluntly, less is often more. Like, I want to, especially if I'm traveling to MIPCOM and you're traveling to MIPCOM, less stuff that you have to bring, the less stuff I have to take home, we're both happier. So keep the materials smaller, but make sure they're all really effective and they get to the point. Again, only excellent stuff, because bad stuff is going to kill your project. And make sure that your personality, your point of view, what is unique about your project is coming off. All right. Finally, we want to really, on this one, focus on playing to your strengths. Again, this goes back, relates to some of the stuff we talked about earlier, but every studio and every creative person has things that they do really well. It might be art, it might be writing, it might be directing, it might be color. There can be a whole bunch of things, but make sure that you're really focusing on the kind of things that you bring and that are going to make your show unique. Okay, and definitely try and talk about the ways that your unique qualities line up with the things that that network is looking for. All right, and priorities for global buyers. These are really the things they're looking for, so make sure that as you're looking at the things that you do well, that they are hitting this, because one of those things should absolutely be a strength of your company. Ideally, more than one of those things is a strength of your company, but if you come up with really original ideas, they really break out, or you've got amazing central characters, okay, and those are things that you do much better than others. These are things that are hard to find out there. So if you can bring that, you're much more likely to sell your project. Okay, final rule. And the final rule is absolutely ask for help when you need it. You do not have to be a one-woman or one-man shop making an entire movie or series yourself. Okay, so there are people out there who can help you with this. Oops. So make sure that you've got locally, wherever you are, if you're here in Malaysia, if you're one of the other ASEAN countries, make sure that you're getting a network of people around you who are people you can trust to bounce ideas off, who can give you great feedback, who might help you brainstorm. You can partner up with some of them to make a project even better. I will say, I feel like both in video games and TV or whatever, I can sit in an office and I can come up with a story for something. And I think it'd be pretty good. I've got confidence on that. That story will always get better when I bring more people into the conversation. People just bring a different perspective, a different point of view. They add things to it. They point out some flaws and weaknesses, and I'm like, that's a really good point. Now I need to go address that. Maybe they'll even give me a solution for how to address it. But make sure that you're getting that group of people. If your town, if your company, if whatever doesn't have that sort of networking place where you meet every other Wednesday to get together and share things, start it. Like, really make sure that you've got that network of people around you to make this happen. All right, and sales partners are something that sometimes people freak out about. People think about getting an agent, people getting about something. They're like, oh, it's kind of slimy. They don't want to really deal necessarily with those people who are all about selling stuff, but you know what? Really good ones know what they're doing and they are going to be worth it. So finding the right sales partner can absolutely be hugely helpful. Make sure if you are in one of these cases, in particular, that's when you are going to be needing a sales partner. So if you're going to a global marketplace and you don't know any of the people who are going to be there buying it, you know what? It would be really great to have an advisor and someone to help make introductions. Okay, all of these things, sometimes, bluntly, you may have the best idea in the world. Sometimes you're not the best person to pitch it. And you have to be honest with yourself about whether or not you are the right person to try and make the sale. You might be in the room, you might be showing them how awesome you are at creating character design, but maybe it's not the case that you should be the one doing all the talking. Sometimes it may just be because you don't speak the same language as that person, and you need someone else to be there to help you with it. So deal structure is another thing. This comes more on the back end with an agent or a lawyer. Most people probably shouldn't negotiate their own deal, bluntly. So you'll want, if you get lucky enough to have an offer from someone, you will want to have a partner to make that happen. And oftentimes, and I see this a lot with Malaysian projects, in order to get enough funding, you very rarely are going to get enough funding if you just sell it in one country or in one market, right? Like that one country, especially, if it's a smaller country, you might get a sale to a network in Thailand, but they're probably only going to pay you maybe $20,000 a year for that particular thing. Hey, we all know that's not going to make your show, right? You need to be able to then cobble together 15 or 20 Thailands to be able to make that really happen. And some people are great at knowing who is the buyer in all of these different areas that can go to. So the kind of people you might be looking at, consultants, like I have worked with companies all the time, and this is not trying to sell you on me at all, but like I'll work with companies about trying to get their project in the right shape, about introducing them to people when you go to markets. There are a lot of other people out there who are me or like me, who can give you those introductions, who will be at market with you, who can introduce you to people and have those kind of discussions. There's also, of course, formal agents. Most of them still tend to be in the US and Europe, but I know that there are agents here in Malaysia. There are agents throughout Asia who can help get your project sold, particularly regionally. And independent distributors is also an interesting thing. There's a group of people out there, there are lots of them, who will actually purchase the rights to exclusively sell your show or your film. They'll put it in their own portfolio. They will go to a marketplace for you, and along with maybe the other 15 to 20 things that they have found that they really like, they're going to have meetings and sell those to the right buyers. They will take exclusive rights. You then can't go and sell your own part of it. They would take a portion of that as well. But those people can also be very useful because they know the people who are buying. And they're trusted by them in most cases. Again, you still want to really make sure you know who it is that you're pairing yourself up with. You have to have a comfortable relationship with all of these people. All right, so recap. Hey, those are the 7 rules that I put down. Again, these were pretty high level. I would be more than happy to talk with more of you out in the hallway out there if you've got specific questions on things. But these are the main steps that we covered. And other than that, just thanks and good luck to you and selling your projects.